Good morning, North County Service District for Roads Budget Committee, and Chair Beachy, I will turn it over to you.
All right, welcome everyone. Thank you, Clerk Moss. And I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say at this point. I call our North Bethany County Service District for Roads meeting for 2025-2026 to order.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll do a roll call first. Budget Member Bruce Young.
Me? Oh, okay. Could I make a comment? Both of my hearing aids died. Yeah, the VA is working on getting them fixed, but in the meantime, so I have to really concentrate to hear you guys. So if you want to, make sure you use your mic and talk loud. And if I'm talking too loud, that's why.
All right.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fye.
Present.
Commissioner Schneider.
Here.
Vice Chair Treese.
Here.
Chair Beachy.
Here.
Commissioner Willie.
Here.
Chair Harrington.
Here.
All right, Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
And Chair, if I could just, Bruce, thank you for letting us know your needs. If you just do like this with your ear, then I can help provide a reminder for us all to get a little closer to mics. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So first, we will have our budget presentation from Director Stephen Roberts.
Great. Good morning, Chair Beachy and committee members. My name is Stephen Roberts. I'm the Director of Land Use and Transportation for Washington County, and I'm here to give you the overview for the North Bethany County Service District for Roads budget, and this is Budget Fund 215. You can find this in your budget book on pages 471 and 472. So I'm going to step through some background material pretty quickly, so you can feel free to stop me along the way if you have any questions or comments. A lot of what we're going to be talking about today is really not directly germane to adopting our task of adopting the budget today, but really a lot of background information that informs how the budget gets adopted or presented to you. And so I just want to note that I'll be happy to either meet individually with committee members and or we may convene a subcommittee meeting if there's a desire to do that, to just talk further about any questions or concerns that you may have that we don't have time to cover today. So on this slide, just a quick overview. We'll just talk a little bit about background materials, look back at last year's budget, and give you the preview of the recommended budget for this upcoming year. So for background, let's see, got ahead of myself here. So your budget committee consists of all 5 elected county commissioners, and then we have seats for 5 community members who either reside or own property in the district. And I know we currently have 1 vacant community member position at this time. So in previous years, we've often convened what we have called a subcommittee. It's kind of an informal term that we coined, but it's a subset of your budget committee. And so the 5 community members, and we've typically invited the District 2 Commissioner, Commissioner Treese, because her district includes North Bethany, and Board Chair Catherine Harrington. So when we've held these, because we do have essentially a quorum of your budget committee, we do publicly notice those meetings and they are open to the public. The subcommittee has provided input to staff on potential project priorities, and those have informed our proposed district budgets. They get reviewed by this full committee and then later adopted by the Board of Commissioners. We did not convene a subcommittee meeting this year. We were running a little bit late with committee member appointments and also with some of our funding projections. And this is also really a largely status quo year, so we don't have any substantive new project concepts to discuss that haven't been talked about in previous subcommittee or committee meetings. And so today I'm really just looking to provide an update on the projects that we do have in design or under construction, and then outline proposed expenditures for 2 potential future projects. I didn't click when I should have clicked, so. Okay, so on this slide, you'll see just a map of the North Bethany Community Plan area, and this actually matches the North Bethany County Service District for Roads boundary as well. It is a subset of the larger Bethany Community Plan area, which is what you see on the map here. This map gives just generalized land uses, and at least on the screen I'm looking at, it's extremely washed out. So the really light areas are mostly lower density residential, darker yellow and brown toned areas are higher density residential. And there you'll see a few pink places. Those are areas that are set aside for commercial development opportunities, neighborhood style commercial. And then you'll see some striped areas along Kaiser Road that are sort of pink and green. And those are mixed use areas that will allow for development in the future town center. So think about like retail with apartments or residential up above it in those areas. So the board adopted the North Bethany Transportation Funding Strategy in 2011, along with the North Bethany Community Plan. It identified 5 funding sources that would be used for 12 roads that are eligible for public funding within the district area. It assumed about a 20-year build-out of this area, and the transportation revenues were expected to accrue over time. Those funding sources are listed on your slide. They include Transportation Development Tax, or TDT, a North Bethany Transportation System Development Charge, Major Streets Transportation Improvement Program, MSTIP, that was one-time funding. There's trust and agency funds, which are funds that are paid by developers but held by the county and then used for a public project. And then lastly, the North Bethany County Service District for Roads property tax. So this slide just depicts the overall proportional share and approximate amounts that were assumed back in 2011 for how these 5 different funding sources would contribute. The two largest slices of the pie, I should say, were the System Development Charge and the Transportation Development Tax. North Bethany County Service District for Roads is the third, and then the MSTIP and trust and agency funds rounded out the total funding picture. So this is really just a map showing the district boundaries. And what you see here is that on this slide that the taxing district was established by voters in 2011, and it has a permanent property tax rate of $1.25 per thousand assessed value. And we'll look a little bit closer at some of these revenue sources in future slides here. This slide gives a quick overview of how the different funds go into the North Bethany Budget Fund and then how they flow out to projects. And so we accumulate revenues from all of the different funding sources, roll those into this budget fund, Fund 215, and that's where the property tax revenues are automatically landing in the budget. And then we combine those funds and then allocate them out to specific projects. So we house projects within this Fund 215, and then we expend those funds out of this budget fund here. This slide just gives a quick overview of how those 5 different funding sources have been paying out over time, if you will, or coming into the fund over time. And so in the light blue color is the Major Streets Transportation Improvement Program, or MSTIP funds. You can see those were spent over a period of 6 years. And again, I mentioned earlier that was one-time funding. There is no additional MSTIP revenue baked into the funding strategy for this area. We also had some one-time trust and agency funds. That's the yellow that was in FY 17-18. And then you can see primarily beginning in FY 14-15, and over time, you see the largest shares of revenue from the System Development Charge and the Transportation Development Tax. Those are one-time fees that are paid at the time that a building permit is obtained. And so as the area nears build-out, those revenues we know will decline over time, although in the current budget year, we are anticipating there could be a little bit of an uptick with a pickup in the pace of new home construction. And then the final revenue source, it's the very bottom one across that chart, is the dark blue, is the property tax revenues for the district. And we'll take a closer look at that here on the next slide. So as there is additional development happening here, you'll see that we had a pretty rapid uptick in the pace and the amount of the property tax revenue. So imagine we went from a largely undeveloped or low density development into its current state. So the assessed value has been increasing pretty rapidly. And you can see that we're anticipating about $1.5 million in revenues for the upcoming budget year. So continuing to see some growth there. And what's going to happen here as well over time as the area builds out, the rate of the growth is going to slow down and be very small. So we can anticipate, based on the way property tax system works in Oregon, that we could anticipate about 3 to 6% per year growth as we're approaching build out in the neighborhood here. So back in 2011, when all the planning work was being done for this area, about 4,200 total units were estimated to be developed in this area over about 20 years. We're already now at about 92% build out if we just use that original base number. And so we've made quite a lot of progress in development over the course of this last, say, 12 to 15 years. The parcels that you see in blue on this map are those that have already either had a development or a building permit submitted, issued, or finalized. And so many of those homes are actually already occupied. And there are a few properties that you see in orange. Those are the few properties that have not yet been through a development entitlement process. Several of those are actually set aside for future public use, parks or a school site. And so some of those areas really are not anticipated to develop. So this slide is a map that just shows those 12 transportation improvement projects that are eligible for public funding through the transportation funding strategy. The projects or the lines that are solid black that indicates projects that have been completed or where in some cases interim improvements have been constructed. Where you see the red dashed lines, and I'm looking specifically at portions of Springville Road and Kaiser Road, those are projects that are either in design or under construction right now. And then where you see the black dot lines in a couple of locations, those are places where there is the feasibility or the potential that there could be developer constructed improvements within the next, say, 18 to 24 months. And on this slide, I'll note that where you see lines, the yellow sort of shading, if you will, around some of the line work, indicates projects that have been constructed by the county. Where you see the other projects that are complete without the yellow, that indicates they were built by developers. So we've made a lot of progress. So I want to just talk about the two projects that we have underway very quickly, and then we'll look ahead at some future work. So this is Springville Road Phase 4. This is going to be the last phase of Springville Road improvements that will finish off full urban improvements all the way between 185th Avenue and Kaiser Road, as was envisioned in the original plan. You can see there's a fairly wide pedestrian path on the slide on the left that runs along the PCC campus frontage. You can see a culvert crossing, one of the things that has actually driven up some of our project cost estimates on this project over time. And I like that view on the right, just a little bit of progress under construction, but I think the view just sort of shows you why that's such a great neighborhood to live in. It's really beautiful. So looking at Kaiser Road, so the photo on the left is the southernmost part of Kaiser Road. That's between Springville Road and Brugger Road. That project is in design right now, and I'm referring to it as Phase 1 because assuming that we're going to need to do some additional improvements on Kaiser Road north of Brugger Road up to about Shackelford, and referring to that as Phase 2. So the two images on the right are the section north of Brugger Road up to Shackelford Road. So Sorry, I'm losing my spot on my script here. In the 24-25 budget, which is the one that we're working in right now, we continued last year with our pay-as-you-go approach. We increased the funding allocations for Springville Phase 4 and Kaiser Road Phase 1 based on some updated cost estimates, and agreed to continue monitoring the need for additional improvements to Kaiser Road north of Brugger Road, or what I've referred to as the Shackelford Gap, so a little missing segment of Shackelford Road west of Kaiser Road. Chair, Committee Member Young has a question. Do you want to go ahead and take those now?
Up to you. I found it interesting when I was going through the documentation that this project is no longer listed on our list of things we're paying for. That it was moved to URMD as a simple paving project.
Oh.
The last time I heard from anyone on this, there was still a certain amount of controversy by the ECHO people about what route they would take between what's already developed and Kaiser. Now, if that's been resolved and the SDC people have already put in, not that, the developers have already put in a foundation to put the road on and out with paving, and that's done. But I don't know, so I was asking the question.
Yes, thank you for that question. So this is not going to be an ERMD funded project. There may be other paving projects up in the area for some of the streets. So some of these roads are actually already old enough that they may be ready for their first cycle of preventive maintenance treatments through the Urban Road Maintenance District. But any of the projects that we're talking about here really will have to be constructed using these funding sources. Yeah, so we'll come back to talk a little bit about that future here in just a few minutes. So looking at our current year, the upcoming budget year, 25-26, we have taken a stab at estimating potential revenues, and we've looked at programmed or allocated expenditures for this year and for upcoming years. And so in this case, you'll see that we have those multiple revenue sources that are coming into the fund. So we have the property tax revenues, the system development charge, and TDT all reflected as incoming revenues into the program. So as we look at a potential unallocated fund balance at the end of this upcoming budget year, so about a year from now, and by unallocated, I mean funds that have not yet been allocated or earmarked or committed, whatever term you want to use, to a specific project's design or construction, so available funding, if you will. We're anticipating there could be about $4 million of unallocated or uncommitted funds about a year from now. I do want to caveat the difficulty in projecting these revenues because so much of it is dependent on the inflow of TDT and system development charge payments. Because those are tied to development permits, the revenue really is dependent on building activity, which is in turn dependent on things like just building demand, market demand, mortgage rates, availability of building materials, and then we have the uncertainty now of tariffs. So there's a lot of uncertainty out there, and so I want to just be sure that we caveat these. So while we've done a good job, I think, of trying to come up with a good faith estimate, I would say we should probably think that we have say that we have low to moderate confidence in it, just based on all those uncertainties. So moving into our staff recommendations for this upcoming budget year, we are anticipating that we want to stick with our pay-as-you-go approach. It has served us well. And what I mean by pay-as-you-go means that we don't commit or spend funds until we actually have the revenues in the bank, so to speak. We're not borrowing money, in other words, against future revenues. And then we do have some good news this year. The actual, as we're getting closer to the end of the Springville project, the estimate has actually reduced about $900,000 from where we were at this time last year. After having to increase that project allocation a couple of times due to cost increases, we think we now are going to come in with a little bit of extra money in the bank, so to speak. Unfortunately, on Kaiser Road, we also have identified that we're probably going to need to increase that allocation by about $600,000 based on our most current estimate for that project. So win some, lose some in this case. And then I did want to note that prior to the upcoming budget year, we do intend to convene our budget subcommittee, our more informal working group, to really look ahead at the future of the district and think about future project allocations, cost estimates, and potential ways to go about funding those. So based on prior subcommittee conversations and the anticipated availability of staff this year and funding, we are recommending the allocation of about $500,000 each for preliminary design and cost estimates for Kaiser Road Phase 2, which is that section between Brugger Road and Shackelford, kind of that last remaining, what will be the last remaining incomplete portion. And also for the Shackelford Gap, and I think that was the project that you were referring to, Mr. Youngs. Yeah. So the anticipation is that we'll go ahead and kick off preliminary design of those in this current budget year. That will allow us to get better cost estimating and then help inform a potential funding strategy. So kind of determining of those two projects, which might be the higher priority, and then how can we pay for one or both of those projects. I will note that this is a sort of late-breaking recommendation, so in order to actually make those funding allocations, we will need to come back with a supplemental budget adjustment in the fall to make those spending allocations in there, but we think that this is a good course of action for this upcoming budget year.
Chair Beachy, if I may, you have member Dan Reed, who joined online and has his hand up for a question. Mr. Reed, can you hear us?
Yes, thank you. Just a quick question about kind of looking towards the future. I was looking at the development map, especially at Kaiser Road. So we've got the stretch from Springville up to Brugger, and then Brugger up to Shackelford. But there's sort of a gap between Shackelford and Sato Elementary, which is in the photo there. It doesn't appear to be covered by an anticipated, future project, but it's not currently, it's not a safe sort of walkable roadway for kids walking to school, things like that. So is that something we can look at for a future phase to improve the walkability of that stretch there?
Yes, that's an excellent question, Mr. Reed. Thank you. So our intention would be to carry when I say Shackelford, I'm using a shorthand, but the idea would be to finish off the road improvements up to that section that you can see now in the slide on the right to connect up the sidewalks to where the existing development sidewalks currently end. So the expectation would be to complete the final middle piece of Kaiser Road.
Okay, so all the way up to the school there.
Yeah, there's actually, this photo's a little bit old. There's actually been some additional development south of the school that has extended the sidewalk a little bit further. And gets really close to where Shackelford Road will intersect.
Right.
So, yeah, so that's the intention, and that's a great question. Thank you.
Great. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I think there's been a development out to Kaiser that's on Kaiser now. So I believe it does start to connect. The sidewalks do start to connect. It might be the other side by the cemetery that we might need to look at.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So the intent will be whatever's left to be done, we'll be taking care of it.
Mr. Young, did you have a question? No. Oh, okay.
Okay. All right. And this is my last slide, I think. So, oops, one more. And so really, it's got animated somehow. I didn't expect that to happen. Wasn't counting on that.
There you go.
Yeah. So this is really recommendations from the prior two slides just placed in a map form. So really just showing that we anticipate finishing off the Springville Road section, that's on the lower portion, and we're able to reduce that allocation by about $900,000. Continuing work on Kaiser Road between Springville and Brugger, needing to increase that project cost allocation. I didn't note earlier, but we'll also be finishing off the last little section of Brugger Road near Kaiser Road that remains incomplete at this point. We'll be picking that work up as a part of the Kaiser Road Phase 1 improvements. So getting that done. And then the two projects that have the dotted circle lines, those are the ones that we're proposing to move ahead with preliminary design for in this current budget year to help us get our cost estimates in line for potential future prioritization. So with that, happy to answer any more questions or to turn it back over to the committee for deliberation.
Thank you, Director Roberts. Do you have questions? Yeah, I think most of my questions were answered in our over the last 2 weeks. My only thought was I know that the THPRD is planning for a park along the back stretch of the Bethany Presbyterian Church, and that I believe is supposed to start this year. And so the coordination of THPRD, because I believe they're looking at a crosswalk also for Kaiser over to the Bethany Creek Falls subdivision. So if there's coordination that can be, have there been talks or coordination there so far?
Yes, my understanding is that we're actually anticipating that the trail crossing would likely happen at Brugger Road, that we would have pedestrians go up and cross at Brugger Road. But I have a subject matter expert I'm looking at. Do we know if there will be a crosswalk south of Brugger Road on Kaiser? But yeah, I know we're familiar with the location, and we have talked about different options there. And so one way or the other, we anticipate that there will be a marked crossing. What I don't know is if it will be at Brugger or potentially south of Brugger.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And just as long as there's coordination there, and when we're laying out and planning things with what they're able to do. Mm-hmm. And then my other question was on that little section of Brugger going out to Kaiser, but you answered that. Is there a developer? I know there 3 or 4 years ago, somebody was, or it's probably been longer than that.
Yeah, it was looked at by several people, but the property's actually been acquired by the Housing Authority, and so they are currently holding it for a future affordable housing development.
That's right.
Yeah, and so we felt like, given that, and it's going to be several years, as I understanding, before they would be ready to develop the property, so we felt it was prudent to go ahead and try to complete that last remaining segment of Brugger Road more timely.
Okay. Yeah, it often grows up, like the grass there is growing up and can be kind of, you can't see that there's a sidewalk there very often. Is there anybody who in this is there anyone in charge of?
Yeah, I'm taking a note now, and so I can pass that along. Yeah,
because I don't think the sidewalk is easily able to be seen, so people don't actually use it as much because of the growth there. But that was really all for me, was that coordination with the parks. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the planning phases for the rest of Shackelford and getting Kaiser complete there. Okay, hearing no other questions. Mr. Reed, you didn't have any other? I can't see your hand.
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, we can move on with my glasses.
Chair, you need to hold the public hearing.
Oh. All right, Mr. Moss, is there anyone else online for the public or in here?
Vice Chair
Trees can help you with the proper procedures.
Yeah, if you just want to gavel us into the public hearing, I will certainly ask.
Okay. Okay, I will open us up for our public hearing.
All right. Thank you, Chair Beachy. Is there any member in the auditorium that wishes to provide public comment on this public hearing? As you've heard the staff presentation, not seeing any in the room. We have one hand online, Mr. Dale Feek. Mr. Feek, can you hear us?
I can. Kevin, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead for up to 2 minutes.
But in particular, can the person hard of hearing hear me? Is that a yes?
Yes, he
Yes,
has a
Mr. Young
hearing
can hear us.
device on.
Thank you. I'm Dale Feek, Chair of the Washington County Citizen Action Network. Appreciate the presentation. The former co-founder of Washington County Citizen Action Network, now deceased, Russ Tondero, was very critical of the development of the Bethany Hills development, primarily because of the slope issues, and I imagine the high-income housing, not housing for low-income residents. And I assume I still have that concern. He would too. Greg Malinowski was the former county commissioner, in which was beat by you, Pam Treese, in that district. And Greg is on the board of directors for Washington County Citizen Action Network. So my comment is basically this: please consider in what you're doing in that Bethany area for low-income people, and also realize it has to cost more money because of the slopes to create the development in that area. And I understand that sidewalks is a problem sometimes and resurfacing the area, but it costs more money. And just be aware that people are looking to say, you know, they're in equity in housing and spending the money. There is a concern. So I'm not critical of what you heard and presented. I just want to make that public comment. Thank you for listening. I hope I spoke loud enough so everybody could hear.
Thank you very much for listening and commenting this morning. We don't often have public comment.
So there is no other hands, Chair Beachy. So you can close the public hearing.
Okay. Seeing no other public comment, I will close the public comment section of our hearing. And now we'll call for a motion. Mr. Young?
Get that on, huh? I move to approve the fiscal year 25-26 budget for North Bethany County Service District for roads as proposed in the amount of $15,365,080 and to levy the permanent property tax rate of 1.2500 per 1,000% of assessed value.
If I could correct that motion, it's $15,365,180.
I'm sorry. I stand corrected.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. Per 1,000 of assessed value. Yes, correct. Thank you, Chair Harrington, and thank you, Mr. Young. Do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Treese seconds the motion. Okay, we'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes.
Very good.
Thank you all.
Yep.
I don't know if you do that. No, you don't need a motion, just say
All
we're
right.
adjourned.
Okay, the North Bethany County Service District for Roads is adjourned. Thank you.
Oh. Okay.